For the Pledge of Allegiance, followed by a moment of silence. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Again, please join me in a moment of silence. Please be seated. The first order of business tonight is approval of the agenda. All second. Motion by Radig, second by Taylor. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no, and the motion carries 5-0. Just for everyone's situational awareness, Supervisor Matthew Wong, normally the chairman, is joining us from sunny California. The consent agenda, items 2 through 6, constitute a consent agenda routine action items to be considered by one motion. These items pass unanimously unless a separate vote is requested by a board member. Number 2 is approval of the minutes of the September 26th, 2023 meeting. Item number 3 is approval of claims. Item 4 for Human Resources, Melissa Thomas, is A, approval of the memorandum of personnel transactions, and B is authorization to initiate the hiring process. 5 from Board Administration, Heather Van Sickle, is approval of the notice of property sale resolution for a parcel number ending in 0006, also known as 2501 10th Street, for Tuesday, October 17th at 4:35 p.m. Item 6 from the County Treasurer, Tina Bertrand. A is approval of the resolution naming depositories to add First Interstate Bank. B, approve the property tax refund request for a parcel number ending in 1024 and the amount of $1,833. C is to approve a property tax refund request for parcel number ending in 2007 and the amount of $38. And D is to approve a property tax refund request for a parcel number ending in 0017 and the amount of $720. Is there any discussion about tonight's consent agenda?
I'll move it.
Second.
Hearing none, there's a motion by Radig and a second by Supervisor Nelson. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no, and the motion passes 5-0. That concludes our consent agenda for this evening. Item number 7 from Safe Place, Stephanie Pickenpaw. Did I pronounce your last name correctly? Okay. If you would come up, and we are going to entertain an approval of a presentation and resolution for the Domestic Violence Awareness Month. Thank you for being here tonight, and the floor is yours.
Every person in Siouxland deserves safety in their home and community, and everyone has a role in ensuring that. While some agencies are tasked to primarily respond to violence, it takes a community to change the culture that allows violence to continue. To know how to respond to this violence, we must understand the root causes. That is what we must address as we also respond to the needs of victims. Domestic violence is a particular kind of violence. Abusers use a variety of tactics to control and harm their victim. It is not random, it is not mental illness, nor is it drug abuse. It is simply a decision by the abuser to be abusive because it works. Domestic Violence Awareness Month is a particular time for people to look within, reach out to do whatever they can to change the culture that continues to harm our community in so many ways. Funding for victim services from the Attorney General's office has consistently gone down every year for the past 5 years. It's important because this funding changes lives. Traumatized families get help to survive and continue to remain active, productive members of society. While always grateful for the funding we receive, it does not reflect the magnitude of victims' needs. The basic needs: housing, food, funds to pay bills, transportation, daycare, all to help families thrive. It helps our entire community thrive. So I ask you to sign the proclamation to show your support and to encourage the members of our community to do all they can to help create change. Support victim service agencies, support legislation that provides funding for victims and their families, and work to change the culture so that everyone can live a life free of violence.
Thank you very much. We appreciate your being here. Is there any discussion or questions for Stephanie?
Just thank you for all that you do, and we'll pray for your efforts and that they continue to be fruitful. So thanks again.
I'm going to go ahead and read the resolution that's before the board tonight, and believe that you'll have a wholehearted support, but we're going to read it nonetheless and hope that it sends a message to our community of support on this board. It says this: whereas domestic violence is a serious crime affecting individuals and families in all Siouxland communities, all races, ages, income levels, lifestyles, and genders. And in fact, it's probably affecting someone you know. And every 9 seconds, someone experiences the crime of domestic violence. And whereas 1 in 3 women and 1 in 9 men will be a victim of violence in their lifetime, domestic violence violates an individual's human rights by destroying dignity, security, self-worth, due to the systematic use of physical, emotional, sexual, psychological, and economic control or abuse. Safe Place works every day to help end these acts of violence and to help rebuild the lives of survivors. And whereas in Siouxland, Safe Place is available 24 hours a day, every day of the year, and last year responded to nearly 2,700 victims fleeing domestic abuse, and despite high census and a global pandemic, no one in an unsafe situation was turned away. Thank you for that. And whereas the impact of domestic violence affects all the members of the community, and only a coordinated community response will put a stop to these atrocious crimes, and assure funding is continuously available to provide these life-saving services. Now, therefore, Woodbury County's Board of Supervisors hereby proclaim the month of October 2023 as Domestic Violence Awareness Month in Woodbury County, Iowa, and we urge all citizens to actively participate in the scheduled events and programs and to think about the fact that it is someone that you know. So be it resolved this 3rd day of October 2023. I would move the resolution.
I'll second.
A motion by Taylor, second by Radig. Is there any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no, and the motion passes 5-0. Thank you very much. Could we all give a hand for Stephanie and all of her staff's efforts in this community? And thank you for your words, Supervisor Nelson. We would echo those as well. Karen, I'm going to hand this to you.
Do we ever get a word back on resolutions requiring roll call vote? Anybody ever?
Joshua, can you advise?
They do not.
Okay.
All right, thank you again. Item 8 is from Planning and Zoning. This is Dan Priestley, and A is to receive the final staff report and the Zoning Commission's recommendation from their September 25th, 2023 meeting to approve the final plat of Townley Addition, a minor subdivision of Woodbury County, Iowa. Dan?
Yes, good afternoon, Supervisors. Dan Priestley. The Zoning Commission sends their unanimous recommendation for the acceptance and approval of the Townley Addition final plat. Had a good, robust meeting, and everything checked out as far as the final plat.
All right, I would move to receive the final staff report and the recommendation.
I'll robustly second.
Motion by Taylor, second by Radig. Is there any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed say no, and the motion passes 5-0. And I will also make a motion to accept and approve the Townley Addition, a minor subdivision of Woodbury County, Iowa.
Second.
There's a motion by Taylor, second by Radig. Is there any discussion on this item? Anything to add, Dan, or did your previous comments
Yeah,
cover both?
Yeah, this one basically is one of those that abuts Sioux City directly. So Sioux City Council approved the extraterritorial review, and they're leaving it in the county for now, based on the location. And again, it's to split the house away from the ground, basically. So that's about the general summary.
Okay. Any further discussion, questions, or clarification? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no, and the motion passes 5-0.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. Item 9 is from Secondary Roads or County Engineer, Mark Nara. Item A is the approval to direct the county engineer to prepare a request for proposal for consultant services for a federal grant application. I think this is a very important item, so if there's a way to verbally highlight or underline, I think this is, all of our business is important. I think this is especially so. So go ahead, Mark.
Okay. The interchange project for the new Southbridge interchange south of the airport is roughly a $30 million project, including right-of-way acquisition, construction, and construction of the roads that connect it to the county system at Highway 75 and at Port Neal Road. This is not a project where DOT has any aid to offer us. DOT's contribution to the project is doing all of the design engineering, right-of-way acquisition, and then the construction engineering for the project. The board's entered into an agreement that the county, being the sponsor of this project, will pay for it. Right now, we're looking at that from a TIF-funded basis. The board asked that we go out and seek other sources of finance, and at this point in time, the bipartisan infrastructure legislation that was passed here about 18, 19 months ago provides for a number of grant programs. A project like the interchange, in doing the research on the different programs out there available, fits very well into both the infra grant, which is for freight corridors and connecting intermodal type facilities. We have river, railroad, and trucking that all kind of come to a head right in this area. And then the other one is the rural grant, which improves access and opens up economic development in rural areas. So both of these grants come due around the August to October part of the year, based on when the applications were due this year. With the project being planned for letting in January of 2026, it puts us in a position where the fiscal year 2025 round of grants will hit us just right for obtaining that money. Infra is a 60-40 grant, so it's 60% federal aid, 40% local effort. Rural is an 80-20 grant. One grant application serves to apply for both, and then federal highway staff that review the grants would determine which one better fit our project and proposal. Obviously, I'd rather have the rural with the 80-20 than the 60-40, but either one would help. Currently, we have $2 million in funding from the MPO. This is also federal aid funding, so this comes off of what we can apply for in a grant. So when we're looking at 28.1 million as the current construction estimate, we have $2 million already off of that.
Apply for 70% more.
Right.
If you get the rural.
That's the idea. Somewhere between 20 and 21 million dollars is what we're shooting for with this. What I would request is the grant writing applications for this aren't a simple fill in the blank grant like we see for most state applications or applications through the MPO. The successful grants, and the County Engineers Association has had 3 of them, are typically written by consulting firms with grant writers who have skills in that area. They're looking for an 8.5 by 11 glossy bound report as they're reviewing these grant programs. It's my recommendation to the board that you allow me to prepare a request for proposals for consultant services. Send that out to a limited number of consultants who have shown a history of success with federal grant writing, and there are a few of them available that 2 of which the County Engineers Association has worked with and found good success already. They would be 2 that I'd be reaching out to. And also our design firm, HNTB, would be a pretty good synergy for the grant writing as well. So my request is that the board give me direction to write the RFP and get grant writing proposals from which we would select a company to work for us in preparing grants for the fall of 2024.
There are questions or discussion? Got a couple things, Mark.
Sure.
So is it one or the other as far as infra versus rural? You can only
That's
get,
up to the grant committees at Federal Highway. I suppose they could give us a combination of the 2, but again, the rural grant is the better of the 2. It would be the one we'd angle for.
are there limitations on either as far as the award amount?
They're all well over what we need.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's not like one has a limitation that we want to get to. They're
They both have
north
different
of-
limitations, I think, on project size. But they both would provide in excess of 25 million if needed. So 20 million is not an issue for either program based on my reading of the grant applications.
And if your proposal is successful tonight, do you go out and give this RFP and then have that come back, or are you going to draft that and come back before the board yet again?
I would draft the RFP and then bring back proposals.
Okay, so
I
it'd go
I
out
don't
and then
think
you
you
bring
need
back
to
proposals.
necessarily get into the details of
Right, I
what we're
concur.
asking that consultant to do. I use some of the work that's already been done by the County Engineers Association, but I'm putting in steps that are specific to our project. You know, we have a great deal of information to provide the consultants in the grant application. We have the IJR, which is basically the blueprint for the information that addresses the connectivity, the ability to complete this project. That's one of the big issues on a lot of the federal grants is there's questions in the grant committee's minds that, is this project ready to go? We have our environmental clearances. We have our approvals from DOT and FHWA. This project is buildable and ready to go, which should put us near the front of the line for grants. Then it's being able to share the information that we've already developed through the IJR and put it in that grant application. That's part and parcel of the things I'm adding to the RFP document so that the consultant knows how much work he has to do and then how much effort they're going to need to bill for as they give us a quotation.
When would you like to see this grant completed? What's the timeline, and is timeliness a part of the RFP that you anticipate asking about the consultant's bandwidth in terms of, you know, I can't get to this for 6-9 months versus we're ready to go in 4 to 6 weeks?
I don't want to wait that long.
Right.
I would like to keep this process moving. The rural and infra grants were due August 23rd of 2023. So that was for last year.
Okay,
So I'm assuming that next year's will be in that same August. I've heard possibly they might be bumped back to September, October, but that hasn't been determined yet. We'll know better. They come out 90 days in advance with a notice of funding opportunity, or NOFO, as the consultants call it. That gives basically 90 days to get it ready. They haven't made a lot of changes. They've only massaged the grant applications in the 2023 and 2024 fiscal years. So I feel the majority of the work could be done well in advance. Once the NOFO is published, then it's just a matter of some minor editing and be able to send it in. What I would like to do is have proposals back from the consultants by last week of October, first week of November. Give us 2 or 3 weeks to look it over, select a consultant, and then negotiate the price of the grant application with that consultant.
And then my last question is, you had mentioned potentially, and I know we did this when we were talking about an architect, an RFP committee. Are you interested in asking a supervisor from the board that's liaison to your department, planning and zoning, budget analyst, or is that something that's to be
I
determined?
guess I would welcome 1 or 2 county supervisors to take a look at it as well. I think that's where it would lie. This really isn't a planning and zoning or a budgetary issue.
Okay.
So, I think supervisors would add a credible effort in looking at the qualifications and then developing a comfort level and seeing the successes that the contractors or the consultants are offering us.
Okay.
A couple of the presentations, when we narrowed to the final one for the next round of raise grants for the County Engineers Association, we actually got to meet with the team who was going to be building the grant. Their RFP was very thorough. They've had great success in grant writing for both Minnesota counties, state of Minnesota, and counties in Iowa and Wisconsin as well. They're one of the ones I would like to solicit, assuming they have the ability to take on another project. But I think my board liaisons would be perfect for this project if they're interested in doing so.
It'd be something that you'd be open to doing, Supervisor Nelson? Sure. Yeah. I'd be willing to as well. I think right now, you're the only one listed for secondary roads, unless there's anybody that's dying to.
You've been involved with this project since the IJR started, so I think you'd be.
Well, and I don't know if you want to, or I wouldn't mind, because connections with Simcoe and past involvement too.
I'll let you guys arm wrestle over it.
He's a little stronger than me, so I don't know, but we'll figure, why don't you
Yeah.
figure on 2 of us, one way or another,
All right.
helping out, and maybe even based on availability, I'm willing
Yeah,
to.
that actually sounds
differential.
fair, because
Yeah.
I know my schedule's not always open, and I know yours isn't always open either, because
Sounds great.
Count on 2 of us, so.
Okay.
With that, are there other questions or concerns?
of course, I think this should actually be a lock for one of these federal grants, just because the proximity to air, proximity to barge, proximity to rail. It's on an interstate, fully developable ground that has utilities. I mean, there's so many slam dunks. for us
DOT
to-
is putting extra money into this project to make it part of their freight corridor so that they can handle transfers of loads from rail and river and get them across the interstate. We really don't have an overpass that's capable of that, and DOT is putting more money into this project to help with that.
And I guess I'd just like to see that when we get this written, we work with our chamber members and our local, United States senators of the tri-state region, if we can get all 6, to put letters of support behind it as well.
That is
Because
part of the
tends to-
process that becomes part of the local entities' requirements. It's something I'm going to be asking the Transportation Commission for at their meeting on October 10th next week. They're meeting in Okoboji, so I'll be going up with Simcoe and City of Sioux City to discuss this project and request that they turn in a letter of support with our grant application when it goes through.
Very good. Dennis, we have money in local option sales tax for the 50 to 70,000.
I use gaming.
Okay.
We have a lot of money there, and it's good use, it generates a lot of money if this is successful.
Sounds good. Well, I would move to direct the county engineer to prepare an RFP for consultant services for a federal grant application.
I'll second.
Motion by Taylor, second by Nelson, just by a nose. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. The motion passes 5-0.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Don't go away quite yet
Nope.
because you are up again. B is award the culvert lining quote to Subsurface Incorporated for $92,770.
Last fall, we did a project on County Road L37, just south of Old Highway 20, where we had a concrete culvert underneath the road, a road that had been resurfaced less than 5 years ago. We were starting to get a settlement hole in the edge of the pavement. Looking through the culvert, and I showed a before picture, you could see where seams had separated under the road. Our staff had tied together both of the outside ends using bolted fasteners that are commonly used all the way across the road today for concrete culverts. They weren't commonly used when that road was built in the 1960s. The culvert sections are all basically intact, but we had gaps in them, and the only way to repair that is to cut the pavement, dig it down, and relay those culverts. A new process of culvert lining has showed a great deal of promise in addressing those problems. So last fall, we used subsurface to line that 24-inch culvert under the road. I showed you what the cost difference was on that. That is based on our most recent concrete patching project cost, where we were looking at the higher per square yard cost for the patches. But, we're looking at between half and 1/3 of the cost to line that culvert utilizing Subsurface's product compared to tearing it out and either replacing or just relaying that culvert. The other thing that this company did was the road was under flagger control for half a day from beginning to end of the project. So the inconvenience to our traveling public was minimized. If we have to close that road, dig it out, relay culvert, replace it, and then put in a temporary patch, a month or so later we come back and put in a permanent patch, we're looking at between 3 and 4 days of complete road closure while that patch is curing finally, and then while our crew's also doing the work. So the amount of time and inconvenience saved for the traveling public, I think, with this process, again, it shows a lot of promise. We've identified 5 culverts that are in need of this type of work. The ends have been tied once again, which helps keep those middle sections in place, but those middle sections still have gaps that allow dirt to seep through and create voids under the pavement. There are other culverts or other contractors who do liners. The price difference between them is not great. They're all about the same. This company is working in 3 of our neighbors, so they've given us a really good mobilization rate. Looked at on a culvert by culvert basis. They're saving us a great deal of money on five pieces of work. I'm recommending a single source on this one as far as completing the work for us. It's work that'll be paid for within our maintenance budget.
Questions or discussions on this item?
I'll move it.
Motion by Radig, second by Bittinger, to award the culvert lining quote to Subsurface Inc. for $92,770. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no, and the motion passes 5-0. Okay, thank you. Next item, C, approval of a resolution establishing weight limits on the listed county bridges. Mark?
This year, our bridge inspections and ratings have been completed. A number of bridges fewer than past years. We're getting this list smaller and smaller each year, which is a sign of the progress that the board's been able to make on bridge replacements. Are being derated every year. And this year, Bridge K103 is actually being raised from a 6-ton posting and a brief closure due to a failed piling back up to a 13, 21, 24-ton rating. So we were able to rehab that bridge last year. It's still providing sufficient service for the farmer. It serves a dead-end road. Last year, we spent about $40,000 doing rehab as opposed to a complete replacement. We probably bought ourselves another 10 to 15 years before we have to take a look at a solution on that road. In that time, land ownership may change as well, which could change the county's options on replacement. But we do have adequate service in place for the farmer in that area. So I guess I recommend the new bridge posting limits be recognized and established by the board on the list of bridges.
I'll move it.
Second.
So motion by Radig, second by Bittinger. Supervisor Nelson.
I had a couple questions.
Sure.
And I just didn't have time to look through your bridge, your 7-year plan, but like on the 2 3-ton bridges and the 6 tons, are any of those in your program?
I gotta look again.
Sorry.
K23 is in the 5-year program.
Okay,
J306, I think, is as well. When we do the next 5-year program, T53 and U17-1, X16 is also in the program.
okay,
T53 and U17-1 will be added.
okay,
There'll be a couple of new projects brought into the program after this year. U17 is particularly a problem. We already have about a 3-mile spacing on that bridge. That's on the Farmers Drainage District. So
I was gonna
a
ask
number
you
of those bridges have already been closed. So we really need
where's
to.
that U17 one at?
It's on 290th Street.
Okay,
And then it would be west of Old 141.
sure,
We replaced the bridge immediately north of it 5 or 6 years ago on 280th. We have the bridge at 290th, and then we have the bridge at 320th, and nothing at the county line any longer. So farm traffic uses 280th and 290th pretty heavily. So.
and then that K023, do you know where that one's at, off the top of your head?
K23 is on, that one is on, I think it's 180th. It's just east of Highway 31, south of Correctionville. So if you know where the Peters Pit, Little Sioux Park are, it's that bridge just around the corner there, right by, I can't, the name of the gentleman's escaping me right now. But it's right near that
Oh, it's,
farmstead.
Cockburn,
Cockburn, yes.
okay. Okay, no, but it's always hateful to have to drop them down that far, but it's good when they're in the
Yeah.
program, so that's
Yeah,
that's
that
always
one is,
helpful.
that one is already in the program, so.
Okay,
That one was lowered from 5 to 3 tons, and it's continued deterioration of the substructure.
it's a very old bridge.
Huh?
It's a very old bridge.
It is, yeah. It's gonna be a challenging one to replace too, because there's a lot of encroachment in the right of way right
Yeah,
around that bridge.
yeah,
too.
I know what you mean, so, thank you. No other questions?
Thank you. So we do have a motion on the floor by Radig, second by Bittinger. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed say no, and the motion passes 5-0. Final item for you tonight, Mark, is item D, the approval of an agreement for professional services with HGM Associates for the Pearson Bridge project design.
Yeah, this year, Pearson received city bridge funds for the replacement of the Corp Line Bridge. We call it Minnesota Avenue. I can't remember the city of Pearson's name. It's also County Road L25, so it is a farm to market route. With the impending retirement of my assistant, I'm losing my bridge designer. Will be teaching our new engineer in training to be doing this type of work, but I don't want this project delayed, especially since we're utilizing an outside funding source. We have this broken into 3 stages. The preliminary hydraulics, we'll have the contractor start on immediately. If at that point in time, I can see we've got enough time to really take our new engineer through and teach it, we could do the preliminary design stage incorporating the hydraulically designed bridge in-house. We also have the option of doing the final plans ourselves. So we can flip the switch and do it internally at some point if I feel we have the time and the capability to get it done. I'd like to get this bridge let next summer so that work can proceed on it. Part of the complication with this bridge too is we're looking at redoing the intersection for the Main Street in Pearson and County Road L25. That's been a repeated accident location there. It's a very deceptive alignment as you come in from the south, coming into Pearson. The plan is to lower that intersection about 3 feet and then bring it in as more of a T and make the primary movement north and south. We'll be grading the road Minnesota Avenue for paving so that we then have that continuous farm to market route all the way up to the Plymouth County line. That is one of our primary north-south agricultural highways through there. I'll also be bringing later this fall a change to our farm to market system to make the main street in Pearson the farm to market route instead of the route by the schools, which is too narrow to be improved to handle the current truck and farm traffic that would normally use a farm to market route. But I recommend approval of the contract with HDM.
I will move it.
Second.
Motion by Taylor, second by Radig. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed say no, and the motion passes 5-0. Mark, do you have everything that you have needed to be signed?
Yes.
Except for this one? Okay. All right, thank you. We appreciate your,
The good people of Pearson will appreciate that project going forward, because that is a terrible, terrible intersection, so.
And them qualifying for that federal aid money helps leverage our county federal aid money as well, because we can keep our money working on rural bridges while the cities are helping us bring in that city funding to do that work. This is the second bridge we've done with City of Pearson. We also did one with Bronson about 8-9 years ago. So it's really handy when they can qualify for these funds.
Mark, do you need this one? The HDM Associates? Okay, so this one's the one that we retain, or the auditor's office?
That one can go to the auditor's office.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, appreciate all your work. All right, that brings us to item 10, which is fourth to last item on the agenda. This is Supervisors Matthew Ong and Mark Nelson. These are thoughts following the September 27th tour of the Law Enforcement Center construction site. Gentlemen, I'll let you wrangle about who goes first.
Since Matthew's on the phone, I'll take the lead on this. So, on September 27th, Matthew Young and I took a tour of the Law Enforcement Center with the construction manager. We pretty much walked through the entire facility, went up to the second floor. The only portion we did not go into is the county attorney's office downstairs. We were told that that space is completely done, and they have it sealed off to not allow any dust or debris or anything to get in there, so we did not go down there and see that. But we went all through the booking and intake, all the cells, both floors, control rooms, the kitchen, sally port, sheriff's office, main entryway, courtrooms. So we were there for, I think, just short of 2 hours. a lot of the work that was going on at the time we were there were the fire dampeners. As we know that there were 37 that were missed in the original architectural drawings, and they are working as quick as they can to try to get some of those put in. For those that don't understand maybe what a fire dampener is, it's essentially a pivoting closed gate that goes on your vents on your HVAC systems that would shut in the event of a fire. So what these guys have to do is they have to take the vents back out and in certain cases cut holes in the concrete walls to allow these dampeners to fit in. And if you've ever had to run a concrete saw, it is not easy work. It is a very messy job. And we have to understand that these guys are doing this, sometimes 10, 15, 20 feet in the air. And while trying to work around vents, plumbing, water lines, electric lines, and all that kind of stuff. We saw all kinds of intricate scaffolding that had to be put up just for them to try to reach some of these areas. I feel bad for some of those workers because they're working in really tough conditions to try to get those holes cut. I got an update from Baker Group this morning. 16 of the fire dampeners have been installed so far of the 37, and they have 4 more holes to cut out of the 37. I believe that the dampeners were only missing in the sheriff's office and in the inmate area. And so we saw a lot of that work going on. As far as some of the other places of the building, everything else going on, they were doing the final coats of paint in the sheriff's office, the office doors and all that kind of stuff were on. In the courtrooms, there's 4 different courtrooms. Some they were putting finishing trim on the bottoms of the walls. Some were finishing the finishing touches of like the backdrop behind the judge's stand, sanding some drywall patches where there were maybe some seams or that kind of stuff that needed some work. There was some installations of some toilets and fixtures, that kind of stuff for inmates. Most of the kitchen equipment was in. They were waiting for hood vents and that kind of stuff to be installed. They had different aspects, portions of the ceiling that were not installed. They're a brick system or a tile system like this, but a lot of that was because that's where they're installing the fire dampeners up there. But anyway, got to see it. It's going to be a state-of-the-art facility. I think that our sheriff department and our correctional officers are going to really enjoy working in there. The design was cool. It's cool to look through the blueprints for the last 5-6 months and then be able to walk it and kind of see how the flow of everything works. So anyway, but it was a good visit. We're hoping to get other supervisors out there. And unless Matthew has anything that he would want to add, that is kind of the gist of what I saw anyway.
Yep.
Thank you very much. Supervisor Allen, do you have anything you'd like to add?
Yes, thank you. Appreciate that, Mark. Good summary. Yeah, it's an amazing project. It's absolutely huge. The design is well laid out as far as the floor plan goes. The damper issue is a colossal project. What we saw was basically that every single damper installation is basically a separate custom project requiring scaffolding in some cases inside finished rooms. The most extensive one required some concrete floor to be removed and then reapplied in a smaller utility type, oddly shaped room. So I don't envy the people doing all that work. My question was how efficiently this can be done if there's prep work and you bring in certain subcontractors that knock them all out at once. It's really not going to be that way. Everyone's a separate size, location, installation process. And so these are really several small projects. You can't really work on one and have some efficiencies by the fact that there are several that need to be installed. So that's some context for everybody. Overall, it was certainly helpful. The construction process, as Mr. Nelson laid out, is still ongoing. And I think some different narratives regarding the contractor were kind of wrecked in both directions. So you have one one narrative that Hausman is to blame for everything and one that they're to blame for almost nothing. I would say I was disappointed by the number of subcontractor vehicles that we saw while we were there working. This is an urgent process, and we heard comments from a lot of people around us that the traffic has decreased. So that's on one side. The other side is been widely reported about the identification of the major issue. And the fact of the matter is that we learned was that it was Hausman Construction's compliance officer that first caught the damper issue, and then notified the fire marshal, and then notified Goldberg Group Architects. So things like that show that who's to blame and where fault lies is not such an easy answer. When there's bad news, people like to jump to a lot of conclusions, but this is a very complex problem to fix, and we'll continue to push for other supervisors to go out and get access, and glad that Mark and I were able to have that opportunity.
Thank you, Supervisor Young. And just one clarifying question. Was that according to the person from Hausman that gave you the tour as far as who caught the fire damper issue?
Yes, and I believe there would be email correspondence to back that up, although I haven't
Sure.
seen it.
No, it's appreciated, and I appreciate, and I think the board appreciates both of you being a conduit of information and being kind of some of our eyes and ears until we can have them
Yeah.
there ourselves. So thank you for.
Yeah, and I left that out, Matthew, but yes, what we were told was that Hausman's compliance officer was a former fire marshal, and when he came out and was doing an inspection, he noticed that the fire dampers were missing. He contacted the fire marshal, which then contacted the Sioux City inspector. They came out and confirmed they were in fact missing, and then they contacted Goldberg Group to start looking at the plans and figure out what had gone wrong. I believe that was correct, wasn't it, Matthew?
Yes, and it's not really, I don't think Mark and I see our role as pushing any sort of certain narrative when we're there. We're just there to see what the reality of the situation is, and the reality is it's a very long process. You're building scaffolding inside rooms and moving apart huge vents and electrical and everything like that, and taking out walls, and these are major renovation projects in and of themselves. So we're not here to sort of cover any narrative, but really just to be as transparent as we can, while maintaining the fact that we're not going to throw a bomb on this and nuke the project and do anything that would cause the actual opening date to be delayed even further.
Thank you very much. Supervisor Radig.
Yeah, I got a question there. You had mentioned it was a project manager that, boy, it feels like last week all over again.
That was unintentional.
Oh, okay. Sorry, you said the project manager gave the tour. Are you saying a project manager as in the Baker Group, or are you saying the manager, Hausman's project manager? Okay.
Yeah, I've been silenced too, but yeah, it was Hausman's guy, yes. So,
All right, sorry, I just wanted that clarification.
Yep.
Obviously, it was a real damper on the project that they missed these.
Cut off bad jokes, so just so you know.
yeah, so there we were. The inmates' laundry was done. Where the machines are and all that kind of stuff, and that was one of the rooms where they have to install a fire dampener, and that was one where I think they said it took 5 guys an entire day to set up the scaffolding in that room, and it was. I don't know how they did it, because I mean, there's just so much infrastructure in that room. So stuff like that really stinks, but they're trying their best, and there's other things they got to work on too, but it was good to see it. So
I'd like to go next if they're, I don't know, Wednesday, Thursday, if they got time, give me a call.
Are you gonna critique some of the painting since they got a lot of that done? I know that was your.
Well, I used to paint for a living, so
Well, that's
yeah,
what I mean, yeah,
I
so.
could definitely catch any
All
mistakes.
right, moving on to item 11. So, is there any other
Appreciate the offer for more delays, Mr. Raddick, but I think we're all delayed out right now.
Oh, how far afield we've gone. Okay, so if toward that end, is that something I know Supervisors Bittinger and Raddick have expressed, and I do, of course, too. Is that something they should work through you? Should they reach out? What's
Yeah,
the protocol?
Yep,
So that we're not getting out of the chain of command, so to
Yep,
speak.
I'm gonna work with the LEC and Baker Group to try to get you guys out there, and I talked to Shane, yesterday about that, and so we'll just continue to try to get that on the schedule, so, yep.
Much appreciated. Thank you both for the copious notes and update. Item 11 is reports on committee meetings. And we'll start from my left and go this way. Supervisor Raddick?
Caught me off guard.
Sorry. We'll start on the other side, your left, out there in the audience. Supervisor Bittinger, anything for the good of the cause?
No, nothing today. Yeah, no committees.
Nothing for me either.
Supervisor Ung from California.
Nope.
Okay. Supervisor Raddick.
So I did have quite a few different, the CERTPA Planning Board, certs. Okay, I gotta get the right month here again. Housing Trust Fund. Housing Trust Fund I had to skip, and somebody took my place as chair. But I was able to make all the other ones via telephone from the desert of New Mexico. One thing that was discussed and passed on certs, it was something that I had been working with the Michelle Boston-Ellis from Simcoe and the finance director there at Simcoe in an effort to make the CDL positions a little more competitive and dispatch positions a little more competitive. We did pass and bump up the wages for those areas just to keep good people and kind of react to where the world has been, and they hadn't received it where a lot of others had, so it was time to get it up there. So that happened, and that's all I got.
Very good. Thank you for your continued work for certs. So I'm passing this out, and I asked that this, so Woodbury County Veterans Affairs newsletter, and I think it's just an awesome example of the professionalism that these veterans, executive directors, CVSOs, and commissioners really exude in our community. We have a very high per capita rate of people who have served, although it's less than 1% nationwide. I think the numbers are much higher in our community. And of course, we have the 185th, the 113th Cav, the quartermasters here in town. But I just invite you to look over this. I'd ask that we move and receive it into the record, so I'd make that motion.
Second.
Motion by Taylor, second by Raddick. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no, and it passes. Are you still on with us, Supervisor?
Yes.
Okay. It passes 5-0. So with that, very appreciative of those folks and how they have just really expanded their outreach. I know they do pancake feeds and get out into our rural areas and actually process claims while out there, and continue to commit to keeping the office going at the same time. Going to update the Veteran Affairs Department tomorrow. Kenny did get back to us with a couple of quotes and fixing the window door area, reconfiguration of the door, so it's more aligned with the hall and can make its way if there's ever a stretcher kind of incident around the cubicle. So I plan to have that on the agenda, but I believe in conversations with the director, Lonnie Coleman, today, that will be acceptable, and repositioning one of the doors and eliminating the side one, replacing the window. And then I think the last thing that I have is I just wanted to commend the 37th annual dinner of the Chamber of Commerce. it was an incredible night, I think, just in terms of our commitment to service as a community. Lieutenant Colonel Scott Mann, of course, talked about his commitment to never leaving a fallen comrade behind and going and using his relationships and leverage back in Afghanistan, and somebody who was a freedom fighter, rescuing that person, and then 1,000 more like him telling the stories to be able to get over, or I don't know if get over is the right word, to be able to heal and deal with the pain and trauma of war and the costs that our families have in sacrificing as well. So Mitchell Betzworth being honored, I just thought it was a great night and very highly thought of in terms of how it speaks of our community. So, any other committee reports or updates? All right, item 12, citizen concerns. Any citizens who would like to be heard?
Doyle Turner, 2738 200th Street, Mobile.
Could you hit your mic, please?
Yeah, Jeremy shut you
muted
off.
everyone.
There we go.
Silence me there.
Not intentional.
I was in Mahaska County Supervisor meeting yesterday, and after the meeting, I was talking to a citizen, and he told me that he watches every one of your meetings. And I kind of gave him this puzzled look, like, dude, you need to get a life here. But he goes, he started with the windmill turbine debate, and Mahaska County has now pretty much copied your ordinance when it came to wind turbines. But he goes, he kept watching it, and one of the things that he said is he really likes how a lot of our votes aren't all unanimous, that it is allowed on this board to have disagreements, and that it's not always the same people that are disagreeing, and that is a healthy form of republic. But as I travel through the state, I hear this more and more, that people are watching this county. I want to give a heads up that I really appreciate. I'm proud of my county. I'm proud of what the board is doing. But I think it also says a lot about our planning and zoning staff, our engineer, who had a big part in that wind turbine debate, and also our attorney staff. All of these guys, you guys are all working together. I watched you guys go through a debate, through a budget this year that I didn't think you could balance, and you rolled up your sleeves and you did it. I just want you to know that people are taking notice of what you're doing, and it's much appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Doyle, and it's always nice to hear good news. And I would just want to echo, I like that we can disagree without being disagreeable, and I think that's really healthy as well. But just as much I want to echo our staff and our employees, I think are second to none. I really am proud of the work, and just seeing the other day with planning and zoning, the way that you were able to balance all sides. It's not an easy place to be, and whether it's getting through the budget or getting sound and timely legal advice, and we really appreciate it everybody does in each of the offices and departments of our county.
It's just good to be recognized by somebody from Oskaloosa as still in this state, you know, because most southeastern Iowa looks at this as pretty much South Dakota.
Well, thanks for bringing back news of the other counties and how they work and operate as well. I appreciate it. Any other citizen concerns? Item 13, board concerns.
Yes,
Supervisor on?
thank you. Tomorrow I'm headed out to India for work, my other job. So if there are any meetings ahead of our 4:30 Tuesday board meeting, I will not be able to call in. I'll be in the air. And around 4:30 or slightly before it, I'll be landing, transiting through International Airport and Customs. So apologies in advance if I call slightly after the meeting time.
That's okay. We appreciate that notice. That brings me to an important point. Michelle, for the auditor's office, I did not respond on the city canvas question. I wanted to make sure people were available. And so October 12th at 4:15 p.m., if that can be passed on to Mr. Gill and Hoffmeyer. 4:15 will work for the board to do the canvassing of the city primary, again on October 12th. I don't know if you need to call in for that, Matthew. I think we'll have a quorum, but
I don't think it'll change the outcome.
probably not. Okay. All right, thank you very much. If there's no other concerns, we are, you have one?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry, Supervisor
No, you're fine.
Nelson.
We're in October, which is going to be one of the busiest months for farmers of the year. There's going to be a lot of farm equipment on the road. I followed a big tractor, grain cart, combine on D12 for a lot of miles today. And just so the public is aware, a lot of these machines can only go about 20 miles an hour. And so all of us want to make it home safe at the end of the day. A lot of this equipment is very large. It takes a lot for them to maneuver, for them to stop. So just have extra caution when you see those big machines going up and down the road. Give them lots of space. It might cost you 5 minutes of your time, but we all want to get home safe to our families. And then along those lines, there's not a burn ban in Woodbury County currently, but there were 3 very large fires on Sunday that had most of our volunteer firefighters in the county out working. And where we get tricked into wanting to burn things is on days like today. We get a little bit of rain and we say, well, I'll burn those leaves or those sticks or whatever. And then it's 3 or 4 days later when it dries out again, the wind comes up and it starts all over. And so we are in one of the driest times in history. We've got creeks that are dry. We've got rivers at the lowest level in history. And so if at all possible, please try to be smart if you have to start a fire or burn anything, because a lot of those first responders drop whatever they're doing, whether it's their job or their times with their families, to go out and fight fires sometimes all day long. And I think a lot of them would much rather be watching football on Sunday or working or something like that. So just use caution as we try to navigate this dry time, and we'll hopefully make it all through the fall together. So thank you.
Thank you for those timely words. Hearing nothing else for the good of the county, this board is adjourned.